afternoon. Afternoon, councillors, our staff and visitors that are with us. Welcome to our meeting. We are online, so remind people that it's been one apology we have for this meeting, that's Councillor Daking, and that's it. I'll just remind of mobile phones if in the room, if you can switch them off. Thank you. Please be seated. Any declaration of interest? Councillor Harris?
Item 16.1.
16.1 for Councillor Harris. Any others? No, thank you. Someone confirm the minutes held on the 5th of May. Councillor Harris moves, seconded Councillor Soward. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all councillors present. That is carried. Number 5.1, Council Workshop Report. Someone happy to move that? Councillor Spencer, seconded Councillor Harris. Just to speak to it, Councillor Spencer? Councillor Harris? I'll put the motion. Anyone else wish to speak to it? Put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is carried. Thank you. Then we go on to new format's got me. Community reports. Trish here. I haven't seen her, so welcome, Trish. The community report from Plastic Free Launceston. Hi, welcome. Good to see you. Come to the microphone. Yes, you're right to go.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Lord Mayor and councillors, and thank you very much for this invitation to deliver a community report. My name is Trish Hoyser and I'm the coordinator of Plastic Free Launceston, Tamar NRM's Catch It in the Catchment and the new Source to Sea project. Thanks again for the invitation to present to you about what we're doing in this community space. I'll give you a quick rundown of what's happening in these three projects. Plastic Free Launceston is now in its 5th year. It continues with community-based education programs with a continued focus on the impact of plastics. We assist with practical advice to reduce unnecessary and single-use plastics. The last 2 years were scaled back, so we look forward to launching our new campaigns this year during Plastic Free July. Our work with schools, community groups and businesses continues, as does our relationship with Dr Jen Lavers and the Adrift Lab team. They forward on their research to us about the environmental impacts of plastics, and we're able to integrate that into our delivery. Unfortunately, it makes for grim reading. Catch It in the Catchment is held in the first week of November and now is in its 4th year. In the previous clean-up events, we've had 1,020 participants and we've cleaned up 2.7 tonnes of rubbish from the Tamar Valley area. They're all the local government areas within the Tamar Valley. All volunteers, so that's appropriate during Volunteer Week to tell you about that. Again, partnering with Clean Up Australia, we hope to attract a broader range of participants this year. Throughout the year, Catch It in the Catchment has also been involved in smaller clean-up events. In March, we did a clean-up around the Silos Hotel area and we partnered with Launceston Sir Optimus. Again, plastics dominated those clean-ups and cigarette butts, so there's definitely a campaign there to be had. With the container refund scheme coming in, we expect that we'll have definitely a reduced number of drink containers being picked up. The Source to Sea project, funded by Tas Networks, is a full-day field excursion that takes participants on a wonderful journey of the Kings Meadows rivulet, from where it starts its source to where it meets the North Esk River at Queechy Lake. Along the way, we stop and take water samples and search for macroinvertebrates, their number and diversity being a measure of water quality. We unravel the mystery of the disappearing rivulet and see where it pops up again. We look at the rivulet's neighbours and the impact adjacent land uses can have on this little waterway, as well as having moments of quiet to look, to listen and enjoy the wonderful Cape Reed Reserve, Punchbowl Reserve and Queechy Lake. So far we've ran 4 of these excursions or field days with John Calvin School, Punchbowl Primary School, the Children's University and Friends of the Museum will be involved in one later in the year. We don't actually make it to the sea, but we do end up at the museum in front of that huge map that I'm sure you're all familiar with of the estuary. And when the kids aren't trying to find where their house is on that map, they learn about actually how the estuary works and the dominance of the mudflat habitat and all its incredible diversity of species. City of Launceston plays an important part in this project, with staff providing expert information on flood mitigation, water quality and the management of reserves. So we look forward to that continuing throughout the year. With all these projects, the messaging is very similar. The environment isn't out there, it's here where we live. To ensure it stays healthy, and we stay healthy both physically and mentally, we all have a responsibility to look after the environment, and the projects such as these provide opportunities for people, for the community to get involved. To finish with some good news, I'm retiring my display of 300 plastic straws. I'm not retiring, I've still got lots of work to do. But I've been carting around this display of 300 straws. They were collected over a couple of cleanups during 2018 and 19 from the Royal Park area. I'm happy to say we hardly see a plastic straw these days. So in the early days when we did the last straw campaign, I like to think that had obviously some impact. We do regular creeks at Newnham Creek, and we're getting good reports that of the large amount of rubbish pulled out of there initially, that's not being replaced as quickly. The 100th bag was pulled out about a week ago. There's a new group called Litter Free Lonnie. This fellow goes out every Monday afternoon and does a clean up, and he helped us get that 100th bag, and we're going to do an audit on that at Harvest Market in the first Saturday in June. That will show the public what sort of stuff we're collecting and how plastics dominate, as well as promoting plastic-free July and catching in the catchment. So I'd encourage you to get involved in Plastic-Free July this year. Use your networks to help attract members to Catch It in the Catchment and the Source to Sea project. Thank you.
I thank you very much, Trish, and thank you for the work you are doing in our community. It is really appreciated, and I've seen you around for quite a few years now, so it's been fantastic and very passionate about it, and it's great. It's great to see, but wouldn't it be lovely if people just didn't drop their rubbish? And wouldn't it be lovely if people didn't just drop their cigarette butts, if we could re-educate people? Some places in the world, they don't actually drop rubbish, so it'd be lovely if we could re-educate people so it wouldn't. But we need to work on that as well. The state government probably does. But no, well done. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Okay. Well, questions on notice are there from the previous meeting, and now it's public question time without notice. Any public questions?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, councillors. My name's Malcolm Cowan, 198 Duke Street, West Launceston. Beautiful day out there in Launceston, unless you happen to live in one of the low-lying areas where the smoke settles. But my questions to you today are, thank you very much for accepting my paper. I hope you have time to read it. Following the State of the City report that recognised that air quality is an issue in Launceston, what action is the council doing to improve air quality? Secondly, in particular, what action is being taken to reduce the level of pollution created by wood smoke? And my third question is, will council consider developing a clean air strategy that takes a regional, holistic approach to the problem?
Yeah, thank you. I can answer the very first question. I've read it anyway, so read your report. Dan, you're going to answer the questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr Cowan. So the Council acknowledges that this issue was raised in the State of the City report. This is in response to question 1. However, we're not currently resourced to engage in significant proactive work in this space. We also need to acknowledge that improving air quality in Launceston is a whole of community issue which will require the collaboration of all levels of government. That said, however, council officers are currently focusing on maintaining our regulatory role around educating wood heat users on how to burn their wood correctly. Our environmental team continue to work closely with Environment Protection Authority Tasmania to undertake localised surveying of wood smoke, including deployment of local smoke pollution monitors to assist with particularly persistent and severe cases of wood smoke pollution. In response to question 2, regarding what action is being taken to reduce the level of pollution created by wood smoke. In dealing with wood smoke pollution, City of Launceston is bound by the legislation and regulations passed by the Tasmanian Government. The regulations we rely on to deal with wood smoke are the Environmental Management and Pollution Control Regulations of 2016, Based on these regulations, we take action where where wood smoke causes a nuisance to neighbouring property, and this is undertaken with an education-first approach wherever possible. For those particularly persistent wood smoke complaints, we work with the EPA to undertake localised air monitoring, and if we are able to ascertain who's responsible for lighting the fire and causing smoke to be emitted, we can then undertake enforcement action as required. The City of Launceston also actively supports the promotion of EPA Tasmania's annual Burn Brighter This Winter education campaign, which you might be familiar with. Question 3, regarding council consider developing a clean air strategy that takes a regional holistic approach. The development of a clean air strategy is not currently proposed, however this is something we are prepared to consider. Whatever the future approach might be, the outcome must be one which can achieve uniform health improvements and adequate winter heating for all of Tasmania's residents without unintended consequences. And we find that's particularly important given Tasmania has the coldest winters in Australia, with almost 7% of deaths in Australia from 1988 to 2009 were attributed to cold weather.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. And thanks for providing the reading material and information beforehand. Any other further questions?
Thank you. Ron Baines, Kings Meadows. Once again, I ask this council if it will prevent East Curtis from being used on our footpaths, and I would like a yes or no answer to this one. Thank you. Quite acceptable.
It's very hard to give a yes or no when we're currently doing a trial, and the trial will determine the outcome of that, so we have to wait to the end of the trial to see where it goes from there.
All right, so I'll take that at this stage as a no. Okay. Does council intend to repair and seal the access road which leads into the boathouse complex, which has been in a terrible state for a few years?
It's started already. It's been sealed right now.
It's going to be done, is it?
Well, I don't know if it's finished, but it's on the way. Is it? It's just
Do we
about
have
finished.
a time frame on this, by the way?
Sorry?
A time frame?
Well, I think it's just about finished.
Well, the works have commenced and weather dependent. If the dry weather holds out, it should be completed in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. Last one. When Peter Jordan was the city manager, he would walk through our main sewer system in order to check the structural integrity and prevent any accidents, you know, like maybe losing a bus load of kids down a sinkhole. Has anybody kept this protocol going, by the way? Does anybody walk through and check them?
Well, I can't say I've had the pleasure, but the sewerage assets are the responsibility of TasWater, although in saying that we have some significant large underground drainage assets, and based on criticality of the asset, the impact of failure and the condition, they get inspected at different intervals.
Thank you. Thanks very much, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you. Any further questions? So, under the provision of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993, Council acts as a planning authority in regard to items included in Agenda Item 9, Planning Authority. So 9.1, there are no speakers. Someone happy to move? Councillor Mackenzie, seconded Deputy Mayor. Councillor Mackenzie, wish to speak to it?
Just briefly, Mayor, I mean, we've had this come to us previously where we agreed to put that out to public consultation. That time period has now lapsed and we've now had responses back from the public, I think of which there were two. One was very brief in that I object to this, and the other one had a little bit more detail in regards to what they objected to in relation to habitat and so forth. Our officers have reviewed the representation that was put forward and have determined that that representation probably wasn't enough to stop this thing from going forward, and believes that we should pass this today and send it on to the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, I can sympathise, I'm sure all councillors can, with those representations. Of course, that it does acknowledge, you know, the need for more housing, more land available for housing, of course. And I suppose it's beholden upon on the council for the two issues really, which is traffic and habitat, for us to make sure that we are allowing for both of those. When it comes to traffic, it's in a position where it is a road that is used for what would you call through traffic traffic that's going from one side of Launceston to the other. So it is something to be aware of, and it's something that the council do have in mind when it comes to the further development in that area. And when it comes to that habitat, well, of course, we've all lost habitat because of the houses that we're in, and that's not going to change. It will be, hopefully, when the development comes to fruition, there will be areas that are left, especially watercourse areas, and that the council also can contribute to preserving other natural habitat in the area as a result of this expansion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Mackenzie, wish to close?
Just briefly, also to note that this was on the GLP for future residential area in Launceston, and certainly I think by the plans that were presented by the developer, he's certainly been very sympathetic towards a number of the issues that were raised by Councillor Walker, I think in particular the watercourse and how that may feed down, and I guess this is a first stage of a bigger development probably into the future, and I think this initial stage certainly won't create much issue. Sure, there'll be a tree or two that are knocked down. Certainly the view, wedge-tail eagles, I think were mentioned in the representation, but that's probably unlikely, I think, in the circumstances of where that is. But anyway, I think it's still a very good development.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all councillors present. That is carried. We now no longer sit as a planning authority. So announcements from the Mayor. Well, it's been last 2 weeks, it's been a great time of back to the theatre, a number of places where I've been able to go, which is fantastic, and music with the Launceston Jamboree, ukulele jamboree, I should say, with Deputy Mayor and I were there, and it was a great time and at the boathouse, and that's where I got questioned about the car park as well. So, and we followed up, and we knew it was happening, so which is great. But also very important to the Australian Music Theatres Festival is on in our beautiful city at the moment, and last night was absolutely a fantastic evening. Absolutely incredible to have some really great talent in our city, some from all around Australia, but also local talent as well. And if you haven't been involved, there are some shows, I think, still seats around available. Get along and have a look and see what great talent we have. And tonight I'm looking forward to it because there are a group of people now from all over Australia and locally who are putting on a show for tonight that they're only just starting today and getting it ready today, and it's going to be there tonight. So it'll be great to see. So encourage people, if you can, to go along to these sort of events, which is good for Launceston. It brings people here, and we have a very active theatre group of people with music theatres from the schools and the Launceston College and Encore, etc. So it's really great to be able to support this as well. Just on Saturday the 14th of May, to take that out, I didn't announce the winners of the busking competition. Plans were changed, maybe because of the weather. And then I did attend the Interloper World Premiere, and absolutely fantastic, from the Rook Company. If you've never seen them or heard them, they are extremely local people now living here, but worldwide experience. They've been right around the world and performed an incredible. The deputy was there as well the night I was there. Oh, it was only one night, I think. No, there's a few nights. So Councillor Stosenchek went as well. So they are absolutely skilled, professional, daring. The things they do is amazing. Great for family, young people, old people. So if you ever hear of them, it's the Rook, and a local company now, right from here. I encourage you to go and have a look with your family. It's absolutely incredible. They are fantastic and a great addition to Launceston and something new for us as a city to have. And it was really great to be there for the opening night and the a world premiere right here in this beautiful city of Launceston. And that's it from me. Thank you. So, councillor reports. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'm really pleased that you mentioned Rook, because obviously that legacy of and connection with circus goes on in the new form, and Tony and the team just outstanding. So we can't wait to see. I'm sure that will be picked up on certainly a national touring schedule, if not an international one. The item I wanted to mention was the 50th anniversary on Friday evening of the Rotary Club of Launceston West, a powerhouse group that have continued over 50 years to make a really significant contribution to the fabric of the city, and we still see their money spinners positioned around the city raising funds for St Giles and other charities. And it was really lovely to go along to the event, to be part of the event, and to hear of the stories of many members, of course, who have passed, who have retired from the club, but of that legacy of a small group of people, now under 10, who continue to make that club operate and continue to invest their time and energy into to the city. So a big congratulations and thank you to the Rotary Club of Launceston West for all that they've contributed over 50 years.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thanks, Mayor. Two things. I think over the last fortnight we've had Neighbourhood House Week, which I think is fantastic, and I attended blowing bubbles last Friday to celebrate Neighbourhood House Week, which is a fantastic institution that sort of exists around the country, and I think well supported by the community. And this week and today particularly, we were celebrating Volunteer Week in Tasmania, which I think some interesting statistics. Something like 170,000 people volunteer in Tasmania. It's about probably 25% of our total population of volunteers in an official capacity. That's not the ones that are not even counted in that list, which contribute something like $3 billion worth of value to our community. So I think it's a great thing, and I had the pleasure today of having volunteer awards up at the Northern Suburbs Community Centre for about 60 of our volunteers, which do a fantastic job in and about our community. We've got 15 to 20 employees, supplemented by about 60 volunteers, which makes that whole thing work. So it was great to see what they contribute, and they all contribute. They teach people to drive, they turn up and assist in various programs that we run for the community. So a really fantastic thing today. And the other thing I found on the thing is that now this week is actually draw a smiley face on your hand, take a photo and put it on the net and wave to a volunteer. I thought that was quite a fantastic thing.
Thank you for that. Any other councillor reports? Councillor Harris?
Just briefly, yes, I'm one of those 150-odd thousand volunteers, and I'll do that, Councillor Mackenzie. But on Tuesday night, busy night, I had two things to go to: the Smart City Strategy launch for Launceston, and I encourage everyone to who's listening, or perhaps around the table, to take the opportunity to look at the strategy that Launceston City Council is rolling out for our city. And it's, I guess it's what the future holds, and it may not be the solution to our parking problems, but it could in fact be one of those, because it could perhaps tell you where the nearest parking spot to where you are is free. So that's something which I thought was very good, and I congratulate the officers, Jared and James, who've been working on that. But we then left that to go across to the Planning Congress, and they were talking about the City Deal, which was very interesting. The City Deal for Launceston's now been going for 5 years. That is a local council, state and federal grouping, and it was most interesting to hear other people. I was sitting next to a couple of West Australians on the night, where they are actually country West Australia, so they're not part of Perth, and they could see the benefits, and they were wondering when perhaps the federal government might roll out regional town deals as well, because when we were talking about how the deal works and the funding and how everyone can contribute to something like the moving of the university into the city, they were a little bit blown away by the cooperation that can be achieved under such a thing. So a very interesting night on Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other reports? Councillor Walker?
Thank you, Mayor. On the 7th of this month, I did attend the climate change rally, which was held in Civic Square here, and I just wanted to reiterate that Launceston Council's actions are held in high regard in terms of our commitment to reducing our carbon emissions and footprint, and also moving towards, I suppose, the banning of single-use plastics in Launceston. So plenty of work still to be done, but encouraging. And just to note that, yeah, people do see the positive things that council are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further? No, we'll move on to questions without notice from councillors. Any questions without notice? Councillor Spencer?
Thanks, Mayor. I had a phone call a week ago about the lighting out the hockey ground at St Leonard's. An elderly lady fell over. The lights in the car park there's no lights there. I'm just wondering if it's possible to put some high-powered solar lights up. It probably needs 3 or 4, roughly around $5,000 each. I'm just wondering if we've got a care or duty that we should have lighting in the car park.
Oh, look, I think that'll be followed up by our staff. Shane, do you want to add anything further?
It's typical for us not to light car parks associated with sports facilities, and I can't actually think of one sports facility we've got where we actually do light the car park. So, of course, there's a choice to light car parks, but it wouldn't just be the hockey centre, it would be all car parks, and that would be a significant increase in the level of service.
Thank you.
Councillor Dawkins.
Thank you, Mayor. Following on from Mr Cowan's questions around air quality, I noted in the State of the City report that the data set was 2016 and then there was the map from 2017 from the EPA. Is it possible to get an updated version of that, please, or to write to the EPA and find out when they'll be reporting next?
I think so. The CEO will follow that up. Thank you. Any further questions without notice? No, we go to committee reports. 13.1 has been withdrawn. 13.2, tender review committee meeting. Moved Councillor Spencer, seconded Councillor Cox. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Spencer? Councillor Cox? Any other councillor wish to speak to it? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is carried. 13.3, Transport Committee meeting. Moved Councillor Harris, seconded Councillor Mackenzie. Wish to speak to it, Councillor Harris.
Just briefly, the main report is there for everyone to read. It was the initial meeting of the Transport Committee, having taken over from the previous Bike and Pedestrian Committee when that had been folded. This, while it hasn't replaced it, it has a different membership and a different strategy, a different vision, and looking at the strategy for the transport going forward for the city. And so it was a very good meeting. We'll meet again in July. I think we meet quarterly. I guess from that point of view, just looking back at the next, the future items at item 15, there are many things that transport impacts in other parts of what we do in the city. Everything from whether you're keeping active, whether there's pollution being created by the cars, etc. So transport and all that is very integrated with everything else that we do as a city and as a council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie, wish to speak to it? Any other councillor wish to speak to it? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all councillors present. That is carried. So 15.1, City of Launceston Annual Plan. Moves Councillor Soward. Sorry? I haven't got that on mine again. God. Sorry about that. It's just not on my agenda meeting one. What page is it on? Okay. So we go on to 14.1. Moved Councillor Mackenzie, seconded Councillor Harris. Do you wish to speak to Councillor Mackenzie?
I do, because I think it's just very informative. Whilst it's not voluminous in what it says, I think what it just says is that they're keeping an eye on what's going on within the flood levy. I think that's the most important thing, and that we're managing our maintenance program.
Thank you. Nothing further to add. Anyone else, councillor, wish to speak to it? No, I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all councillors present. Now we can go back to, or up to 15.1. Councillor Soward moved. Councillor Harris, did you want to second it? Yeah, thank you. Councillor Soward, wish to speak to it?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just very briefly. Obviously, this states very clearly our progress against our annual plan actions for the period ending 31st of March 2022. And the couple of things that I wanted to highlight, it's very easy every fortnight when we sit around this table and deal with different matters to sometimes lose sight of, I guess the big picture of the work that's being undertaken. And I think when I worked my way through this report, and I'm just doing that now, I think from memory there were 48 different actions being undertaken in this annual plan. And as it expresses there, Mr Mayor, at the period ending 31st of March, 42 of those were still in progress, 4 were complete and 2 were not started. So I just wanted to highlight that. I'm not going to go through them all individually and provide commentary on them, but obviously a significant body of work but critically, Mr Mayor, that number of 48 different actions. I mean, that says to me that the city is obviously very, very busy, doing some very big picture work, not just for now, but for the future. And I guess, Mr Mayor, I'll just finish up by saying probably what makes it even more noteworthy is that in the last, as we know, the last couple of years particularly, the impact COVID has had on not just us, but on the world really. But the fact that, you know, despite all that and the challenges and all the things that go with that, this city is working on a large number of pieces of work, a couple that have been completed, many still in progress, that will drive this city's progress now and going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harris. Question? Yes?
If I can, please, Mayor. Just a question. The Greater Launceston plan is shown as being 20%. I note that the Greater Hobart plan for the next 30 years has just been released, and I was just wondering if there's a time frame on when the GLP review might be completed. I think it was probably about 7 or 8 years ago that the GLP came into existence, and I just wondered what its cycle of when that might be done.
Thank you. CEO? Oh, sorry.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Harris. The GLP we have a technical advisory group and a project steering group that's been established for the review. They've agreed a 2-phase approach. We've gone to tender and have a consultant for the implementation of phase 1. We've applied for additional funding for phase 2. What we're waiting to see is if we're successful in our funding application, because then we can merge phase 1 and 2 more seamlessly. So we're just waiting on the outcome of that funding application. That should be by the 30th of June.
Very good.
Thank you. Councillor Harris?
Yeah, just another question if I can, and it's just on the level of service review under Strategy 3, which is shown as only 5% completed and still being scoped. And again, just looking for an indication on the timeline, because certainly the level of service is a very important part of council's operations, because it affects I guess what we as council do for our ratepayers, and whether we're sweeping the streets 3 times a week or only 2 times a week has a significant influence on the amount of cost that we incur in doing that, and whether that's actually sufficient. So I was just curious to ask about the level of service.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. As you indicated, it's a key project moving forward. It's one of our improvement actions in our long-term financial plan. We have budgeted for an employee resource to support, a contract resource to support the project. We were unsuccessful in going to market to recruit someone. So we are rescoping approach and looking at an internal delivery model for the beginning of the project, and hoping that we can go to market with a revised PD for implementation around data collation and recording for this further into the project. But yeah, we had an unsuccessful recruitment, so we've changed tack.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie?
My question is more just for future thinking of our annual plan, and given the conversations that we've had in recent weeks regarding homeless in our community, as to whether our annual plan should have something that's actually there to bring it to our attention. You know, when we talk about we connect with our community, our region, as to whether it comes under that bucket, which is not necessarily us spending money, but it's our lobbying, it's a number of things there, just to bring it more to a focus on a regular basis, that we keep it at the front of mind and how we might engage with other government institutions. So this is more just as a forward thing for a future annual plan to consider.
Yep, thank you. CEO?
I might just say, Mayor, obviously there's work happening right now in respect of scoping exactly what the council's role is in respect to the committee which we've been tasked through the previous decision of council to form. So that will be a basis in terms of that terms of reference, and really clarifying, you know, where we fit into the what is quite a complex, you know, network of providers and government agencies that work in the space. But your point is right, but certainly that is already entrained through the work that Dan and his team are doing. So,
thank you. Any further? Councillor Walker?
Thank you, Mayor, and I echo the comments of Councillor Soward insofar as the amount of work that the council is taking on. I do, direct people towards looking at that. Of particular concern to me, of course, is our work in terms of an Aboriginal partnership, something that is ongoing, something that I regularly liaise with our Aboriginal community about. in terms of consultation and their expectations from this council. It's recognised that the council are taking steps forward. We have, as a council, voted to no longer acknowledge January 26 as a day worthy of celebration in this community. We have recently, very recently, put the Aboriginal flag on our building, which is probably one of the most significant things that Launceston Council has done in its nearly 170-year history, as far as I'm concerned. I don't normally put my personal opinions in here, but it's still something that has a long way to go, and it's something that we can work together. There are reasons why we're taking those steps forwards. I would ask councillors and the community to ask themselves why that change is happening, what it represents, and what it can be in the future, what it can become in terms of a positive partnership that this council can have with its broader community. And I suppose the only other one, as I mentioned before, in relation to the climate rally, council's goals in terms of sustainability and carbon reduction plan to achieve carbon neutrality for the council's own buildings by 2025, and it's encouraging to see that that is well underway. And again, another thing that once that's achieved, there'll always be more work to do, but we are leading the way as a council for our community, and not just in Launceston, but for Tasmania in that respect. And in that respect, I thank the council and the officers for the work in that area.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Sauer, do you wish to close? I will put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all councillors present. That is carried. Going to 15.2, budget amendments. Councillor Mackenzie's moved. Councillor Sauer has seconded. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Mackenzie?
I think it's all said there and explained by the officers.
Thank you. Councillor Sauer?
Councillor Mackenzie has summed it up perfectly.
Any other councillor wish to speak to it? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all councillors present. That is carried. 16.1, councillor conference attendance.
We should stretch this out for a couple of hours, this conversation.
Well, we need a mover. We could wait for 2 hours before we get a move. Oh, Councillor Dawkins has moved. Second to Councillor Sauer. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Dawkins?
Collaboration in this space is incredibly important, and I think that Councillor Harris will do a fantastic job of representing us at this meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Sauer.
Councillor Dawkins captured it beautifully, Mr Mayor, but I know Councillor Harris will walk there and won't take his car. Yes.
And Deputy Mayor.
And of course, what the previous speakers have failed to mention is that we look forward to receiving the detailed written report post the conference.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Dawkins, you wish to sum up, close? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? And that is all councillors present. That is carried. Yeah, I've got to stay. Yeah, it's just start. Is he got? So we're going to officially close the meeting now that you're back, Councillor Harris. And just to remind, if you could stay by for 5 minutes or so for councillors and the staff. Thank you.